In your experience, what is animal communication and how does it work?
Animal communication is the transmission of their emotions that we're able to read through our heart and our mind being in coherence. So it goes beyond the language of words. We use the language of words, which are symbols for emotions, which is energy that we're all feeling. So the premise of this is that we're all energy and that everything is energy. And the animals have the capacity to be able to feel deeply into their emotional states as a response to whatever their circumstance is, whatever is going on in the relationships in their world, whether it's with another dog, another cat, they're human, whether somebody's moving, having a baby, all these life transitions, they're having an opinion and a feeling in response to that. And through the language of energy and emotions, I'm able to pick up on, and you would be able to pick up on what they're feeling in response to that. They're having a response that's separate from their behavioral cues, like wagging their tail or panting. And when you tap into their language, it's the language of the soul. Our spirits, our energy, our humanness uses the language of the soul, which is our emotions. And animals are very well versed in being emotionally very deep. So my work is to translate what they're feeling in relationship to a situation or a person or a diagnosis.
Okay, well, let's unpack that just a little bit because in my experience, animals, they always look so sad, but they can't possibly be as sad as they look. So how do you get beyond what they look like when they've got those big puppy dog eyes to get to what they're actually trying to tell you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's taken a long time to be able to not project or assume what I think they're feeling. So there's this whole process around going inside, quieting the mind, going underneath the turbulence of my own emotions. And I always describe it as being able to drop into the spiritual heart. I think our heart has more than one layer. And when we drop into the spiritual heart, it's very quiet. And then you start noticing the emotions of another being, whether it's human or an animal. And to do that, you have to be very aware of what you're feeling and do a body scan, an emotion scan before you actually connect, so that there's this very clean slate that how they feel then impresses, it makes an impression on that clean slate that then you're able to translate. So for me, that's how I do it. I try very much not to project what I'm thinking or what I would feel in that situation. I clean the slate and I wait for what I call little ripples in my field. And those little blips in my field, for me, turn into pictures, a sensation in my physical body. It might be an emotion, but I have to then have this pregnant pause so that I can then translate it instead of making an assumption about what that is for another being.
Right. Thank you so much. That answered the question perfectly. Now I realize, yes, I have been projecting onto my critters. So thank you. So you also communicate with animals who have crossed over. Is the process different?
It's a matter of raising your vibration when they're in the physical and you're able to connect with them because they're in your kitchen, in your dining room, on your couch. When they're here, you don't have to work as hard to communicate. And I think a lot of us, we rely on their behavioral cues. But if you want to communicate with them through telepathy or through the language of the soul, you have to focus and clear your energy centers first. And each of your energy centers are like notes on a vibrational scale. So your chakras are they're notes, and they're different levels of frequency and vibration. And If you have a real heart-centered animal, you can connect there. If you have a real playful animal, you might use a lower note. But when they're on the other side and they're no longer limited to their form, you have to transcend the physical and go to where everything is pure energy, pure thought, pure love. And to do that, you have to raise the vibration beyond the highest note through the crown and start going to the level above your head and your mind, which starts connecting you into a network that's very quantum in nature, but you start connecting more with their spirit instead of their personality. And when you're in their personality, they're very much connected to their soul, I think, and their spirit. But what you're left with after they cross over is pure spirit.
Okay. Now, this brings up another question to mind because animals don't communicate with words. When you're receiving messages, are you receiving just sort of impressions and then you translate it into words, or how is it that messages come through?
It's exactly that. It's the images. Before something becomes form, it's pure energy. And so feeling into it and letting go of the words actually helps you tap into the essence of what they're trying to communicate without having to label it as a certain expression, as a certain mood or emotion. You're just feeling. And the more you stay with that feeling, it gives rise to however your dominant way of tapping into communication is your dominant sense. So if you're more clairaudient, you're going to hear things. And if you're more clairvoyant, you're going to see things. And there's different levels of intuitive communication that falls within those levels. But I think what I've learned over time is if an animal has a dominant way of communicating, it's important to meet them where they are instead of always expecting them to meet us where they are. So if I'm, which I am, primarily clairvoyant, if an animal is more clairsentient or they're more kinesthetic, I go to their language because I know how to feel into that connection through their expression, and I just change channels, which is a different frequency, and then I get the information that I want. That's one way of doing it. And then the other way I work is if I have trouble with it, I have an agreement with my guides that they know how I best work, and I ask them to translate for me and give it to me in a language that I can then translate, which tends to be more through imagery and emotion. So I use both.
Okay. So then I'm also wondering, because you will communicate with both living and animals who have passed on, what would cause somebody to actually contact an animal communicator, your client base? What kind of people are they?
It's pretty varied. I specialize in working with elite performance horses that are hunter jumpers. And a lot of things happen really quickly for them, including injuries. And sometimes it can very much look like they're acting up or they're not, whatever, I put air quotes, but doing their job. But a lot of times they've got pain in their body. And it matters because then in the next day or the next couple hours, they're going to be going up for their coursework. And people want me to track why they're knocking down fences. What are they feeling in their body? Is it emotional? Is it physical? And so I do that. I'm pretty strong as a medical medium. And I have 20 years of critical care nursing under my belt. And so when I was a nurse, what I learned how to do after being validated through x-rays and labs through many years is feel into the energy of a certain disease process, whether it's somebody with heart disease or diabetes or pancreatitis or cancer. Those, again, are frequencies. They're energy that vibrates in a certain way. And a lot of people, when they're in the process of diagnosing their animal, which of course I wouldn't do. I'm not a vet. I can tell their person how they're feeling. They have pain in their lower left quadrant of their belly, or it's really hard for them to swallow, or if they're going over a fence, my left hip catches, or I have pain. All those things are why they would call me, including maybe somebody who wants to bring in a new animal into the house, or maybe they're going to have a baby, or maybe they're going to move, or maybe they're going to go on a trip and the animal's going to be kenneled for a month. And so people want to let their animal know the plan. But a really big reason people call me is to help prepare animals for a death transition. And then following up after that, they want to have continued ongoing relationship with their animal. And it's entirely possible. We just have to raise our vibration in order to connect with them. And until the grief falls by the wayside a little bit more so that people can do it on their own, they use me to help continue and have a continued relationship facilitated.
Thanks for listening. Check out Castle Gate, a novel based on my own ancestral healing journey, at lisabonis.com. In 1921, 4 men set off from Scotland to the United States. Will Garrock, his brother Pete, his son Willie, and his nephew Thomas, all coal miners. They left behind the miners' rows and the nationwide mining strike with its soup kitchens. Their destination was Castlegate, Utah, where they had kin to welcome them before sending for their wives and children. They prospered in America, working in one of the finest mines in Utah. Until that tragic day, March 8th, 1924. Disaster struck. 3 explosions, trapping 171 men inside. Rescue crews worked tirelessly for days, but sadly, they could not save a soul. Women were widowed and children were orphaned, and some never recovered from their broken hearts. Castlegate is the true and tragic saga of a Scottish family whose dreams of finding their fortunes in the bountiful coal mines of Castlegate, Utah during the Prohibition era explode in one of the most devastating mine disasters in American history. Learn more at lisabonis.com.